is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That there was something that some of you may know, some of you may not, but sounds very familiar to the ear to me. That's a song called Powerful Man. It's brand new stuff from the band, or the project known as 3.2. The record is called The Rules Have Changed. And on the line right now, we have Multi-Instrumentalist and a guy that has just a tremendous history in the world of progressive rock, the one and only Robert Berry. Robert, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm good, Chris. I'm actually talking to you from Cabo San Lucas. I'm looking right across the ocean here, Lovers Beach and the Arch and everything. I'm right here, right in the heart of it. And my feet are very sunburned, so if I say ow once in a while, you'll know.
Well, I'm jealous because while it's hot here, it's not as scenic here in Cleveland, that's for sure.
Well, okay, Cleveland. I was just in Cleveland with Greg Kinn a bit ago.
Okay, Excellent. Well, yeah. I got to tell you, Robert, I've been listening to this record, 3.2, and for people that don't know, this is a spawning, I guess, of the Project 3 from back years and years ago that you did with Keith Emerson and Carl Palmer. It's quite a journey, I guess. That's probably the best way to put it. It's quite a journey that you have been on to put this project together and to fulfill what I think was a mission of your own, sort of, to flesh out these songs that you were working on at the time of Keith's passing, no?
Yeah. I'll try to give you the short of it, but it's hard to do. In 1987, Keith, Carl, and I got together, started the band 3. We had a record contract with Geffen, had a top 10 song, but we went on tour, great tour. The band, it always says the failed 3 project, but actually, for the top 10 song and a very successful sold-out tour, we were successful for a year, the second year when we toured. But the criticism for Keith, not so much for Carl, it was funny because he did Asia, but for Keith, it was really tough. People didn't want him playing songs, let's say, back in 1988. They wanted ELP back. They wanted the 20-minute pieces. They wanted Tarkus. They also hated it that he had 2 female background singers in his band. And the criticism was really, really harsh. And Keith was a sweet guy, really wonderful guy, and he takes that kind of stuff really hard. As the tour went on, people were saying things to him, how dare you do this? Who's this Robert Berry guy? We never heard of him. Where's Greg Lake? All that stuff. He felt like it wasn't working for him, so he didn't want to do a follow-up 3 album.
Okay.
I had written a couple songs for the second one already that wound up on my album Pilgrimage to a Point, and that showed already that where I thought we should be going, which was sort of halfway between ELP and Asia, let's say. It wasn't progressive, but still songs. And Keith wanted nothing to do with it, so we broke up. My path led me first to Sammy Hagar for a couple of years, to Ambrosia for a couple of years, then with Greg Kinn, and all of a sudden in 2015, a record company puts out the 3 Live in Boston CD. And initially it was just sort of a paycheck. Yeah, Keith says, okay, yeah, well, let's do it. I'll get in advance, be some money in the bag, that's fine. But then he got a copy of it, and he called me one night. He was so excited. We had worked together on all kinds of things over the years, remained friends. It wasn't like I hadn't seen him in 27 years, but I would never approach doing another 3 album because he wanted to leave behind. And here was his phone call. He was so excited. He said, I can't believe it. Robert, I just listened to the CD. I'm sitting home, glass of wine. I like to listen to music at night. He goes, we were a really good band. And I couldn't believe the excitement in his voice. I said, well, Keith, I always thought we were. He goes, no, I mean, really good. We were so alive in the jamming. And he started going into all the things that 3 was. 3 wasn't as structured as ELP. It had some loose places for us to continue doing inventive stuff, and his solos were different every night, and we were playing to smaller crowds that were right there in his face, and he felt that adrenaline and everything. It just couldn't have been better, but he didn't think so back then. But now, 2015, he heard it, and he said, I can't believe how good we were. And that was my little window of opportunity. I sort of calmly said, "Oh, what would you think about doing a follow-up album?"
Right.
And he very calmly said, "Maybe." And I thought, "Oh, you know what they say when you're dating a girl, the door opens, you get your foot in there so she can't slam it, right?"
Right, sure.
So I got my foot could barely fit in that crack, but I put it in there, and I immediately called the record company, Frontiers, who had been bugging me for a year. Serafino has been so good to me. He goes, "But I want a second 3 album." I said, "It's not going to happen, not going to happen." I called him, I said, "Serafino, my foot's stuck in the door, I'm not going to let it close. What do you think?" He goes, "I'm ready, let's do it." Called Keith back. I said, "Keith, they want to do it. We're going to offer good money." I said, "What do we want to do?" We came up with complete artistic control, a year to do it, and a couple other things weren't as important as those two things to the both of us, especially Keith. And we agreed it has to be a certain amount of money. Mm-hmm. So I called him back, and I said, "Serafino, here's our demands." Serafino said, "I'm ready." And I had told Keith the amount of money that they had offered, and he jokingly said, he goes, "Who has that kind of money now?" I said, "Well, you're Keith Emerson. What are you talking about? They want an album with you, they want 3, you're Keith Emerson. What if you, of course they're going to offer you good money."
Sure.
And he said, "You should be my manager," he joked, right? So I'm on the phone with Serafino saying, I was going to say, okay, and the budget's good, and I just came out of my mouth, and Serafino's either going to laugh or hate me for this when he hears it, but I'm going to tell you. I said, I upped Keith's part another $10,000. I said, "But Keith wants this much money." Like that. If he thinks I should be his manager, I'm going to act like it. And Serafino said, "When can you start?" I called Keith back. We actually started working right away. We had a cassette tape from 1988 with one song on it that I didn't particularly like back then, but we said we should do that. And when I heard it, I thought, why didn't I like it? This is fantastic. And we had that. We had some digital files that Keith had sent me, new stuff he had recorded, great fan of keyboard stuff. And, of course, I have full-blown, top-of-the-line studio, so it was easy for me to send him things that I was coming up with, too. Right. And then the beauty of it was, and I've spoken about this a lot, but you have to sort of visualize this. In his room, he has a Casio digital piano, a real nice one, a top-of-the-line hammer action. They used to brag about how great it was. And in my studio, which has the best everything, I just have this little Casio piano on top of my board before the screen of the Pro Tools, so I can tell singers, well, here's a G, you need to hit a G, or here's a chord, but let's change that chord. It's just for me to give examples to people in studio. And Keith's playing on his with his phone up to his ear. They're probably on speakerphone, actually. And I'm playing on mine, and he's giving me ideas. And you just have to visualize that. Him in his house in Santa Monica, me in Campbell, California, my studio. We're 3 rehearsed originally, actually. Keith's been there a lot, recorded there a lot. But we're doing this over the phone, and I'm trying to put down the ideas he's given me, translating through my fingers, and, of course, playing it about half speed between what he's doing, and him saying, no, you missed a note in there, and this chord, so he's sort of mentoring through these parts we're talking about. But if you could just picture that and how exciting that was for me, sure, and how empowering, because when those phone calls were done in a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour even, we'd hang up, and I'd be there with these ideas, and empowered, excited. And, of course, that was a 27-year-old dream for me at that point to do a second 3 album, which is the reason it's called 3.2. It's like in computer, like software language, sure, the second version of 3, version 3.2.
Sure.
I just don't know if I could really get across how that felt to be working, even though it was on the phone. Mm-hmm. It was just amazing to whittle away at this thing that way. And, of course, I'd put them all into the Pro Tools little parts, and they're just placeholders, those parts. The other stuff was real. I had his digital file that sounded great, and to be honest, his cassette tape from his barn studio back at his house in Sussex in 1987 was super high quality. He had an 8-track analog recorder there that he recorded on all his great keyboard sounds. And he had given me this thing, and wow, it sounded so good that I used parts of that, too, of that song. I was going to use all that on the album, but then the state made me replace everything after he was gone. Right. They said, if you want to use his writing, we don't want you to use his playing. I said, you got to be kidding me. No, they said, we want him known as a composer, remembers composer. I said, you're kidding me, right? This is the Jimi Hendrix of the keyboards.
Right.
You want him known as a composer? Really? You know, we were doing this, working it. I've got 20% of his stuff already. It sounded great. Nope, can't use it.
Ugh.
So I said, if that's the parameters, if I'm going to do this album, that's what I'll do then. I mean, you learn what to fight and what not to fight. And there's a six-member board, faceless board of Emerson's estate that who knows what they're thinking and why, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of, if that even answered the question,
No, it
I'm
does.
just rambling. I apologize, but I didn't swear once.
No, no, it definitely answers the question. And, you know, now I'm curious from hearing that, how, you know, you listened to it, and I've heard the record several times now. And I mean, there's very little question that pieces of this came out of the mind of Keith Emerson, or the hands, or, you know, wherever it came from. It definitely came from his vision. I'm curious how much of it you think sounds exactly the way he would have done it if you and him would have really worked together, versus you having to do your best to translate his ideas from those calls into what became the record.
That's a very perceptive kind of question that they sort of asked about, you know, what was used, what wasn't used. But what I'll tell you, when you look at my Pro Tools screen for a song like One by One, before I did my parts with the verse, melody, and the chorus, it looked like a Halloween pumpkin, I like to say. There was missing teeth. There's Emerson's intro, done. His piano, his string thing, and, you know, that it was done. It was something he had. The middle section, done. The chord structure. The link sections that go out of the chorus into the next verse or into the solo kind of things, done. I mean, I had his playing, his real sounds for his synthesizers, his pianos. I had all that, but all the song was missing. Keith's not a songwriter, especially, you know. Mm-hmm. He's a parts writer, and he rearranges classical pieces and stuff. Like the genius he is, just hard to believe what he's done and how he does it. But he doesn't write a song with lyrics, let's say.
Okay.
So I had all that in there. I was writing the songs around that. My part of it, just like in 1988, I was the guy that wrote the songs. Even though Desde La Vida was mostly Keith's, I wrote the melody, the lyrics to that. You know, that the song piece of it was mine. On my way home, even though I gave 100% credit to that to Keith because it was for his old manager, I just felt the right thing to do. I still wrote the lyrics and kind of the melody, the chords kind of dictated the melody. That was my part of it. So I was still doing my part of it. He actually was doing his part of it. We just didn't get to the next stage where the glossing over the top, all the stuff. But I knew what he did with that kind of stuff, the sounds, the instruments he used.
Sure.
So when they told me I couldn't use his playing, I have a Moog. I have the Korg Oasis. I have an Oberheim. I have all these things that Keith would use because I started as a keyboard player, so I have the old stuff too, plus the new stuff. Mm-hmm. And I majored in music in college. I had 8 years of classical piano, 2 years of jazz. I started as a keyboard player. I'm not saying I'm Keith Emerson. No one can beat him. He was one of a kind, the best in the world. But I'm capable, is the way I like to say. If I work hard enough, I know sound, because I have a studio I produce every day in that studio when I'm not on tour. And what I did was I worked until you can't tell the difference between what he had and what I had to do. And so the essence of Keith is still there. The flavor, if it's sped up a little bit, slowed down, whatever it was, you know, if the tone got harder on a certain note, I did everything I could do. So I could have used his parts, they let me know him, but I don't want to get in trouble someday. They say, hey, wait a minute,
right.
We need to see that Pro Tools file. So I used what I did, not what Keith did, but you can't tell the difference. I had one guy, Emil Prasad, come down, and I showed him. He's a famous writer from the Guitar Player magazine, has a great history as a writer. I showed him what Keith did and what I did, and he sat there and he looked at me and he goes, I'm having to take a leap of faith. I said, what do you mean? He goes, but that's not Keith playing. I said, well, that's a compliment, and I appreciate that. And I worked hard on that. It was important to me. I didn't want to do it.
Sure.
In fact, it upset me to do it. That's not the album that Keith and I were doing together. All of a sudden, in my mind, I'm going, darn, the part of his. But I got to say, people have heard it. They don't feel that disconnect. That's the good thing. They don't feel a disconnect in it. They tell me that we feel the essence of Keith in it. And I don't know. I couldn't be happier with the kind of response I'm getting. I'm getting a knock on the door here. I'm going to go ahead and keep asking me questions here. I want to see what they're saying. Oh.
Sure. Well, the question that comes to mind is where you're saying that, you did your best, and you absolutely did. I mean, I honestly, from listening to it, did not know it wasn't Keith. So, I mean, that's a compliment in itself. But to you as a musician, and somebody that is a million times more qualified as a musician than I could ever hope to be, how do you feel about the sound itself? Does it feel karaoke-ish to you, or does it feel to you like you were able to do more than just capture an idea?
Because I had to complete the songs and I had to write so much. I mean, we had 20% of the album of Keith. Mm-hmm. There's a whole 80% that needed to be written. Plus, the sounds had to be glued together. I couldn't just recreate his intro without making it have continuity into the verse or into whatever it was, Mm-hmm. So sound, it was a real, it's hard to explain. Good question. I will say that when it got done, I could listen to it as if I didn't do any of it.
Okay.
It was the strangest thing. I would sit there and tell myself, what would Keith do? What would Keith do here? How would I respond to what he said? It was a real exercise in trying to retain the essence of what I knew Keith did to my songs, what we did together, and what we had talked about for the future, how we wanted to bring this into the more current, with the drum sounds being more acoustic and big and the rhythm being powerful, that kind of stuff. So there was all kinds of other elements we had talked about that were just as important as the playing. Just the rhythm part of this, the continuity of it all.
Sure.
That is the part that glued together. That you saw in karaoke, that was copying. I could see you saying that. That is a good question. But because of everything else that had to be connected and played in the same kind of vein and created in the same vein, and I guess I should ask you, does anything seem like there was one piece of music, like, 30 seconds, and it's just glued together with some other piece of music, boom, and buttered up together where there's no continuity?
No.
Or do you feel like the album as a whole has a flow to it?
No, it absolutely has a flow to it. And like I said, I did not know that Keith's parts were not in. I mean, I'm an ELP fan, and I had the 3-record way back a million years ago when you guys were actually doing it for real, and it's cohesive. It definitely is cohesive. The thing that is almost scary, and I guess it's scary good about your talent, is that you not only were able to capture an idea almost in the, I'll say the voice, but the musical voice of somebody else, but you were able to do it in a way that it's comfortable and not tributizing, I guess. And maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't.
I get it. Yeah, no, I love that. That's really clear, and honestly says it much better than I could have. And I was inspired by him for so many years to do this kind of work. And actually, Geffen was grooming me for this Bryan Adams Sting kind of guy, taking all the progressive musicality out of my music, trying to package me like the 80s Journey and everybody else was all packaged. And Keith was the reason that I could really go back more to my roots of Yes and ELP and Genesis, all the stuff I love, and open up and be that musical guy that I always loved being and liked. That's my roots. That's where I came from, you know. But they're trying to take that away from me at the record companies. You don't play with Keith Emerson and take away that piece of you. That's no way. So he kept that alive, and that's all these, 27 years later, 30 years later now, that's the reason that that is there.
Sure. Now, will you try to put together some kind of a touring band to share this music in the live setting, or is this strictly a recorded project, or are you not sure yet?
You know what's funny? I was so worried about criticism. At first, I didn't want to put the album out, and then I checked it with a few people. Serafino at Frontier being one of them. He said, he said genius. I hate to say that because I can blow my own horn, but he thought it was fantastic. It was exactly what he wanted to be and what he thought fans wanted, and a few other people. And then I decided, okay, well, let's put it out. But I wasn't going to even put it out. I was so worried that people were going to say, who does this guy think he is doing this album without Keith? Keith's gone. But I worked, it took me a year. It took me 9 months to get back on track, just coming out of my sorrow and being so upset about losing my most famous friend and the guy I had a top 10 record with. And I mean, so many things with Keith and I in my life were the best that ever happened to me that I had to get over that. So it took me a year after that to do the album. And I thought, well, I might have just done this for myself because I really needed to. I just don't think I don't want to set it up. And it's not that I can't take the criticism. I don't want Keith to be disrespected or our work to be disrespected because, I was in a band with the guy. I have some ownership in that 3 sound and that 3 name, and I'm proud of it. And I don't want to be the guy that ruins that. You know what I mean? And it has been the greatest response. And to get back to your touring question, I didn't plan at all on it, but what people are telling me is, you need to play this music. We will come. We want to see it. So what's been talked about now is actually the Robert Berry History in Prague tour, starting with the first 3 albums, a couple songs, going to Pilgrimage to a Point, songs that 3 and GTR were going to do that weren't released, heading on to my time with Ambrosia, where I did a few progressive songs with them. I had a great tribute series of Magna Carta, like Roundabout and stuff, where Steve Howe actually played with me on that. And then the 3.2 album, it makes a hell of an hour-and-a-half show, and I could almost go out, even though it's not a greatest hits tour, it's almost like the greatest hits, because I have so many songs that in the progressive world that people know, and there's only one chance to do it, and that's what makes me excited. There's only one chance for me to do a second 3 album. This is it. Keith's gone. I can't do anything else with this one. And there's only one chance for the first time for me to go out on tour and do my history in progressive rock. So that's what they're talking about setting up. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Absolutely. And you know what, man? To be really honest, there's so few progressive prog rock bands left that do it in this fashion. I know there's the Prague Power Fest and all this other stuff that's out there, but it's not based, or it's based, but it's not sounding like the true mid-70s to early 80s prog rock sound that this is. There's so little of it left that there's got to be an audience that's out there that's hungry for it.
I hope so. There's a lot of prog metal now, like Dream Theater kind of offshoots, and there's also a lot of bands that have lyrics that are sort of don't mean anything important and stuff. And I always wanted to tie all that together. I wanted to be musical. Keith and I both didn't care for the progressive rock term, but that is the genre of the music. But we considered it more musical, orchestrated. There's not a lot doing it in that way with the lyrics and the meaning and all this stuff. So I'm pretty excited about it, actually.
No doubt. Well, Robert, the project is called 3.2. The record is called The Rules Have Changed, or the release. I guess it's not a record anymore, but the release is called The Rules Have Changed. And Robert, has a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the release and maybe tell us a quick story about it. So what would you like us to wrap this up with?
Well, I think I'd have to pick Powerful Man, because Powerful Man is about, really, I wrote it because of Keith Emerson's son, but all the guys I've worked with, Sammy Hagar, Steve Howe, They all have sons that are great musicians, inspired by their dads, and that song is about great dads inspiring their children, and in my case, just happen to be musicians. So I'm going to pick that because it's one of my favorites.
All right, well, let's play it right now. This is Powerful Man. It is 3.2 right here on your Classic Metal Show.